Good afternoon, and thank you for tuning in. I'm your host, Attila Ceres, for NBT, the Lighthouse for Great Ideas. Today we have a very special guest, Colin Drane. He's with spotcrime.com. He's the founder, and spotcrime.com, I don't know if you've heard of the website, is a very cool place. You can go there and pick up crime data from all over the world, and in fact, spotcrime.com is the leading source of data, crime data in particular, on the internet. So thank you, Colin, for coming on our show. You're in New York, right?
Baltimore.
Baltimore, wow. Well, still East Coast, and thank you for staying up late to watch ThinkTech. I know we have viewers from all over the world, so hopefully we're going to catch someone in a daytime time zone. So thanks for joining. Now, why don't you tell me a little bit about spotcrime.com? Why did you come up with this great idea for a website?
Well, there's many different histories there, but the main history is I was a transplant to Baltimore, and Baltimore, if anybody watches The Wire, knows has a fair amount of crime, and I was curious where all these shootings were happening, and mapping technology became easier around the same time. There were other cities that started to map their crime, Chicago notably, and I just wanted to map crime in Baltimore. At the same time, there was a lot of cities becoming open with their data, specifically Washington, D.C. and Dallas. And I assembled a team that was really good at mapping, and we thought more and more cities were going to be open with data. So we envisioned spot crime, and now we're mapping. We're just about to add Australia, actually one state within Australia, and we map the entire UK, most major cities in the US. And we are now the most visited crime mapping site in the country.
Wow. And it's going to be in the world, I believe, too. I saw that there was I went to London, and I saw that there was a robbery just recently. And I know that there are some challenges with doing something like this. It's not as easy as it sounds, right? You can't just mash up a bunch of stuff, right?
Right. The data is not easily accessible. There's political issues in terms of making the data available, as well as legal issues, and there's also complexities in terms of how the data is organized. Probably the biggest difficulty is government will to make the data available. We have a lot of pluses where we see cities, big and small, making their data available. And we also see other areas, other police agencies, just heavily resistant to making that data available. And unfortunately, like Honolulu, we see cities taking a step back away from open data and not continuing with that promise and just taking it off the shelf.
Well, why would a city be hesitant to share crime data to its citizens? I mean, it sounds like basic stuff here, right?
Open data and transparency for me sounds like basic stuff, but along with that comes accountability. And if you haven't had experience doing that, or if you're concerned, or if you don't have a strong background in technology, there might be a fear that the data somehow gets manipulated. There's also a fear that it causes hysteria, and there's also police agencies and governments that haven't historically practiced being open, so it's foreign to them, and it's not a high priority.
Well, I mean, if I'm going to move into a neighborhood, it's sure great to look at the crime data, especially if I'm moving from out of state, like say into Hawaii. But I know in particular, if you have children, that's a real issue. You want to find out if there's anyone who's been convicted or accused of these kind of things in your neighborhood. That data is publicly accessible. I mean, I'd sure like to know if there was, a murder or a mugging or something else in my neighborhood. That's just kind of basic, right? So, what kind of success did you have in Maryland there, where you started in Baltimore?
It's mixed, and I actually just testified at the state legislature regarding an open data bill. It's something. I run a business that I view as a press organization in terms of we publish crime data and deliver it to the public, and it's a for-profit company. But in Maryland, it's a mixed bag. So we've had really interesting successes with agencies that historically have not made their data open. Interestingly, though, Baltimore, despite having a high crime rate, has been one of the most open cities, relative to, for example, in New York City, who just started making some data available in a very poor fashion. So, Baltimore is way ahead of most cities, or has historically been. And then, around Maryland, you get, a mixed bag of counties that are really technology advanced, and other counties that, just are not comfortable making the data public. So there are counties within Maryland that we've reached out to, for 6 years, and they still refuse to make the data available.
Wow. That's just so random, because it seems to me like do they have a standardized way of storing, say, a crime in a database?
Excellent question. No. In addition to the resistance to making the data open, each police agency has a different methodology and a different philosophy of how to organize or database structures. We just mapped some crime data in Minneapolis, or outside of Minneapolis, that came off of an AS400, right? So really old system. Some have really advanced systems that are almost deliberately designed to not make the data open. So you get both ends of the spectrum, and then they have different classification systems. So one of the things that we did at Spot Crime is, once we reached out to the open data community and said, hey, this is what we're doing, and also we are one of the few companies that is successful in terms of using public data. We have taken no outside grants in terms of the company, and we're profitable. We're not a massive company, but we're self-sustaining, by using open data and giving it to the public. So that's we feel that's a really good example of use. But what we found from the open data community is there's a need for standardization of this data in terms of how it's delivered to the public. And for us, it was kind of obvious. You list the crime types, the date, the location, and some other fields. But what we found was, that documentation was needed to help guide agencies and also folks helping to make this data public. So about 2 weeks ago, we made a document public that kind of guides agencies and folks looking at and instructing agencies in terms of how to make that data public for the public. The focus there is to make it fairly simple so all agencies can follow it, but make it digestible enough so it can be useful to the public.
Yeah, I saw that. It was on your blog, and you pretty much just outlined all the different formats that they can send it to you and how others can pick it up, right?
Right.
So what are some of the people using this data for? What's the big danger? Why should we be afraid?
Yeah. Well, I guess one thing that you mentioned about, first of all, police agencies historically have made certain amounts of data public, and that'll come out in a press release, for example. So if a 7-Eleven is robbed, right? Sometimes they'll put out a press release and maybe an image of the individuals who robbed that 7-Eleven, because it's a high-profile crime, it's recent, our contention is, that's important, but maybe it happened 2 towns away from you. But why would a police agency make that data public, but be reluctant to let you know about the burglary that happened, around the corner? It seems incongruent that an agency would put out a press release about a high-profile robbery, but not about the burglary that happened around the corner from you guys. So I don't know exactly what the danger is, but there is some concern about privacy issues, and that is typically handled by anonymizing the specific address. So we map to the block level. So we don't tell you it happened at 510 Main Street. We tell you it happened at the 500 block of Main Street. But the data gets used for people who live in communities because they want to know about trends, they want to know about what's going on. And the other, it's used for people who are moving to communities or moving, or looking to make decisions about where they're going to move to. That's the 2 primary drivers. And it's also used commercially, banks use the data to kind of, get a threat assessment of their branches, as an example, or apartment buildings use it to kind of get a sense of, whether crime is increasing around the apartment building or decreasing. So it has multitude of uses, but for the most part, all positive uses in terms of people getting an awareness of what's going on around them.
Well, and it sounds to me like you're trying to become the middleman between all these different counties and countries to standardize a way that we as JQ Public, John Q Public, can go out, grab this data, and write applications around it. Are they worried that maybe we're going to profit off of their hard-earned data entry skills, entering in crime data into an old AS400 and then making that data available for app developers to go out and make things and profit from it? Is that the concern?
There is some agencies are concerned about somebody making money off of the data, right? Which it doesn't make sense for two reasons for me. One, it's public data, and if somebody arranges it in a useful way, and it's useful and it creates profit, so what? Secondly, folks are making money off of this in terms of the folks who are selling the databases and so forth, even though it's not being made public. So there's folks making profit off this data anyway. And then finally, newspapers have been producing crime barometers for years, for hundreds of years, right? So the sense of making profit off of this data, a crime barometer is probably a top 3, if not top 2, read portion of a newspaper for hundreds of years, right? So it's not like this is something new in terms of delivering the data to the public. It's just the expectation that it's in a digital format is what's new.
Well, I sure would love to download an Excel spreadsheet of everything that's happened close by where I live. That'd be really neat. But you know what, Colin, we do have to run to a quick break, so those of you watching, just stay tuned right there. I'm your host, Attila Saras for NBT.
Castle and Cooke, Hawaii. Investing in Hawaii, creating communities, and providing for the needs of our state. Collateral Analytics, empowering the real estate industry to make better informed property investment decisions. The Foreign Trade Zone, bringing the benefits of the Foreign Trade Zone programs to Hawaii businesses and entrepreneurs. Galen Ho, a senior executive of BAE Systems, a global defense, security, and aerospace company. Hawaiian Electric Company, and its affiliates Maui Electric and Hawaii Electric Light Company on Hawaii Island. The Hawaii Energy Policy Forum, incorporating diverse perspectives to design a flexible and forward-looking energy strategy. Hawaii Energy, the state's energy and efficiency program created to help Hawaii's residents and businesses adopt a clean energy lifestyle. Hawaii Gas, helping Hawaii achieve its transition to clean energy and a better energy future. Hawaii Pacific Health, bringing technology and teamwork together to transform healthcare in Hawaii. The High Tech Development Corporation, attached to DBED, is the state's leading technology agency. The SHIDLER Family Foundation, supporting educational, cultural, and charitable organizations, including ThinkTech.
We're back, we're live, and you're watching NBT, the Lighthouse for Great Ideas. I'm your host, Attila Saras. With us today is Colin Drane. He's the founder of spotcrime.com. It's the internet's largest database of national crime data for the United States and now spreading abroad into the UK and Australia. So very cool stuff, and we're talking about crime and some of the challenges involved with trying to work with local law enforcement to get that data out into the public realm where everyone, people like you and me, can go out and figure out what's going on in our neighborhood and see if we want to live there or see if we want to move there. Learn more about the world around us. And appreciate you, Colin, for working so hard to try to get this data out to us. So thank you for that. And, do you have any stories maybe you could share about your neighborhood and what you've discovered using your own service? Actually, recently, within the last couple of months, we noticed a pattern of burglaries that was, pretty evident in our neighborhood. And, I was able to distribute that information through an email chain to our neighbors.
But we get interesting anecdotes quite often. Folks calling in or emailing in and offering, hey, this is how we use the data. We got, you usually have certain folks within the community who are interested in reducing crime. A couple of months ago, I had a lady who just moved to Nashville and was asking about our Nashville feed, but she was instrumental in getting a data feed to spot crime through her police department up in New York, and was working with a neighborhood watch, and using the data from spot crime was actually able to narrow down and help local police find a meth lab. And a lot of these stories, in terms of how the data is shared or how it's being used, we don't know because we don't get that visibility. But it was really neat to hear the story. So
they found a meth lab using the spot crime data, and I guess it's sort of like crowdsourcing, crime trends is what it really looks like. You're taking the data that maybe our local law enforcement doesn't have the resources to process and giving it out to the world.
Yeah, another great story that we've got. We just started mapping Woodbury, Minnesota, and that was the AS400 I mentioned. And the reason why we're mapping this is a local citizen who had computer knowledge basically asked the police agency to make the data available. That police agency doesn't even have the technology themselves to map their own crime data. So our very basic system is now giving information back to the police that they can use to identify trends that they probably weren't being able to do in the past.
And so you're still trying to work out the kinks of the U.S. system. What are you finding from trying to spread your service into the U.K. or Australia?
We're finding the U.K. is an interesting thing. About 2 or 3 years ago, they decided to make their data available nationwide, which is a massive undertaking because we've interacted with the UK government, and the assumption was because it's an entire country, all the data was uniform. It turns out some of the same problems we're having in the U.S., different databases and different approaches and different personalities is so it was a pretty massive undertaking, and they got it done. The downside of it is the quality of the data versus what we get in the U.S. is not as good. It's old, so it's a couple of months old, and it doesn't have specific dates on it. So it's getting better, but definitely has some downsides. But it's the whole country. What I'd like to see in the U.S. is an entire state kind of coordinate with all their police agencies statewide and make their data public statewide. We still haven't seen that in the U.S.
Now, is there any new data that's going to be coming out? Is there anything that's different about crime data abroad versus here? Like, for example, do they do profiling in any of that in any of those data sets, and we don't do some of that here, or is it vice versa? What's it like?
For us, we're very narrowly interested in just the basic open data. Profiling or predictive technologies around crime data is a really hot topic. Kind of minority report, and there's some studies out of California where folks are claiming to predict within a very narrow range where the next car theft is going to be. That's interesting stuff. It's not our bailiwick. We're still trying to get good quality data from all the agencies, which is still a massive undertaking. So, but internationally, for us, what excites us is, as I mentioned, you're finding more and more countries, jumping on the bandwagon in terms of open data. There's possibility that France may open their data, and the fact that we're getting data out of Australia now is pretty encouraging as well.
Well, think about this. I don't know if you have this out there in Baltimore, but I know in LA, if you see one of those guys, those police officers on the side of the road with the radar gun, and right. You drive by, then you can. There's a not very flattering app name that does
right.
this that allows you to spot them and post it. So I'm wondering if you can't get that data from the actual source, why not try to crowdsource some of that and integrate the two together? It may even be better.
Yeah, crowdsourcing was the original brainchild of spot crime. Folks reporting their own crime in. But the truth of the matter is, if you're encountering a crime, it's hard enough to report it to the police, right? And taking an extra step to reporting it through an app or something like that was there just wasn't enough data there. That is being done in Brazil. There's a really neat project down there called Wiki Crimes, and because of the infrastructure down there, getting crime data is really difficult. So Wiki Crimes is you're able to see some pretty interesting data on a map, but it's not really robust. But crowdsourcing, whether it's video or data like that, or from social networks, I think our goal is to coordinate the crime data. And if somebody wants to build something on top of that, I think we're still scratching the surface. There's a lot more interesting stuff that can be done with this data.
Well, so what can we look forward to? Because we only have a couple minutes left. Why don't you tell us, some of the cool projects to look forward to, some neat things that they can check out on your website, maybe a link to your blog, if you can mention that, because that's really interesting for developers. And,
Right.
Just tell us, give us your vision of the company in the next couple of years.
Yeah, some of the stuff that we're really proud of is really basic. In terms of we deliver over 8 million emails on a monthly basis, right? And email is an old dumb technology, but it's still a great way of getting information to the public. Often referred to as dark web. But by the same token, we're working on new products for mobile. Not just giving you crime data, to your mobile device, which we have an Android and an iTunes app, but giving you statistical data or additional awareness of what's happening in terms of a trend for a crime. That's something we're looking forward to and delivering hopefully mid this year. And then the other thing we work on is getting this data out as quickly as possible and rendering it as fast as possible. Mapping is it's come a long way in the last 10 years, but still we'd like to do it faster and give folks more information as quickly as possible on the map.
Yeah, I really like that. Now, if you've seen Mad Mimi, they have like this little map that shows the things happening in real time and who's opening your emails. It's very cool. So, you're right. There are some very cool mapping technologies out there. It'd be neat to integrate your stuff together with it. So, I'm really excited and looking forward to that. Well, thank you so much, Colin, for joining us, and thanks for sharing Spot Crime. So, of course, the website is spotcrime.com. Our guest was Colin Drane, and he was the founder of Spot Crime out of Baltimore, Maryland. We really appreciate you tuning in. I know it's a little bit late for you there, but thank you for coming on to ThinkTech and Next Big Thing.
Great, thanks, Attila.
All right, guys. Well, stay tuned for more ThinkTech. I'm your host, Attila Sarest.